Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident panelist, as always, Ryan Schlipp. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_data. Well, just as I push record here, I see Cooper Kupp signed with the, the Seahawks. As I was reading it, I saw Rams, and I'm like, oh, that's not right. 3-year, $45 million contract. Obviously don't have any of the details with that, but it's a heck of a lot more than I would have wanted to pay him. Not that it's high, it's 50% of a top-end contract, but it's still too much in my estimation. I stand by the fact that I have no idea why you get rid of Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf and then go sign Cooper Kupp to a 3-year, $45 million contract when Tyler Lockett is like a different... I mean, maybe he's not as good as Cooper Kupp. Maybe. I don't know. They got to be the same age. They're both, talented slot guys. I don't know. I don't know what you're doing. I have no idea. And to make matters even worse, the only guy that's still there is Jackson Smith-Njigba, very talented wide receiver. He's a slot receiver. So the only thing you have is a slot receiver. You don't have a tight end, you don't have an X, you don't have a Z. You don't have those things. What should we do? How about a 32-year-old broke-down slot receiver? I mean, I'm guessing you're going to move Jackson Smith-Njigba to the boundary. Would be my assumption. Just because I have no idea. I don't know what you're doing. But I've never liked their GM. I think he's very bad at his job. I don't know if I've ever heard him speak before. Either that or I have, but he recently took up narcotics. But he was speaking. He just sounds weird and out of it, and I don't know. But I think he's always been very bad at his job. Again, he had... When he first got to Seattle, he comes from Green Bay. Green Bay is legendary for their front office, and this guy comes from Green Bay, and he gets in there, and man, those first 2-3 years, he revolutionizes the Seattle Seahawks with Russell Wilson and the Legion of Boom, and oh man, they're a great team. After that 3-year historic run, I can't think of a single thing that guy has done that's been impressive. I think the best move he did was trading away Russell Wilson. That's about all I can think of. I don't know what the guy's doing. I mean, he's been riding on that. I mean, I guess they brought in Geno, but I don't know if I can even give him credit for that. I mean, you really thought Geno was going to be able to do that, I guess? I don't know. And now he's gone, so I don't know, man. And how you can come from Green Bay and have no idea how to build an offensive line, I don't get that either. But here we are with the Seattle Seahawks signing Cooper Kupp to a $15 million a year deal. So, okay. So he's off the books. Like I said, I didn't really understand that being a thing. I think it was probably... the one thing that I thought was funny, and I think I've noticed this as a trend, and it doesn't have to be the way that I'm laying it out, but have you noticed how a lot of times one of the first teams, when you hear this team is in on so-and-so, it's always the Packers. Always. There are 2 teams in on Jim Bob Stevenson, and it's the Packers and the Raiders. They're never one of the last teams. When the deal's getting done or when it's close to getting done, it's the, Raiders, the Jaguars, and the Seahawks. What happened to the Packers? Now, you could say, well, they dropped off, or or the Packers get used to gin up interest. But once there's actual interest, you don't have to lie anymore. You can talk about, there's negotiations going on between XYZ team. The only reason the Packers came up was to try to get interest. But once they get hooked, you don't need the Packer name anymore. I think that happens a lot with people like Cooper Kupp, because that never made any frickin' sense. The Packers weren't in on DK Metcalf. They weren't in on Devontae. They're not in on Amari Cooper or anybody else. They don't want any of these guys. But they want Cooper Kupp. He makes less sense than literally any wide receiver free agent on the entire list of wide receiver free agents as far as I'm concerned. I've never seen a less appealing wide receiver in my life. The age is wrong. The position is wrong. The injury history is wrong. Everything about him is wrong. But the Packers were in on him. No, they weren't. I mean, maybe. But I think it's more likely a lot of times when we see this, again, you hear the Packer name early, you don't hear it later. because they're throwing out fake names to try to get people riled. Oh, there's 5 teams in. Oh, the Packers are almost about to get a deal done. So people start calling. And then once actual offers are on the table by real teams, not the Packers, then they talk about the offers. There's offers in from the Seahawks. I really think that's what that is. And that's why, again, you see it early, and then later on it's 3 teams, 2 teams, 4 teams, and mysteriously the Packers aren't on that list anymore. Interesting. What happened, I wonder? Or, again, it's the Packers picked up the phone and were like, hey, how's it going over there with Cooper? Like, what do you got for a price or whatever? So that's the whole thing, and then they never called back. It's like, what happened with the Packers? Well, they were never really interested. They're just asking. You know what I mean? But I do think that there are instances, whether it's Cooper Kupp or not, where that is the reason why that happens. All right. Next up, in other news, the Aaron Rodgers saga continues. It sounds like as of right now, the Vikings are having, this is via Diana Rossini, serious discussions about the possibility of signing Aaron Rodgers. So essentially, the way that this is going right now is the Steelers and Giants are very patiently waiting for Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers is not responding, and at least part of the reason is because he wants to hear what the Minnesota Vikings have to say so that he can get a full understanding of his options and then mull them over and make a decision. Now, it kind of sounds to me like Rodgers just wants to be a Viking, because if his preference was the Steelers, it wouldn't really matter what the Vikings have to say. That's, just me thinking here, but who knows? Maybe this is part of a more holistic approach. I don't know what that even means, but you know what I mean. Like, just it's a drug thing. So, look, I've been saying from day one, and it doesn't mean it's going to happen, but I've been saying from day one, it just makes the most sense from both sides. And Vikings fans do not want this. A couple do. I've seen a few. I've also seen some borderline suicidal posts on social media about the prospect of Rodgers being their quarterback. I don't really know why. I mean, the path that is run concurrent between the histories of Brett Favre and the histories of Aaron Rodgers are really, really shocking. I mean, just absolutely shocking. The way that things deteriorated with the team and the way that things kind of were iffy down the stretch, the way that they were kind of passing the torch to a new quarterback, the way that he went on to not just a new team, but the Jets, the way that they both got hurt with the Jets and that they were resounding failures with the Jets. What is the next step in this evolution? The next step is they go to Minnesota. And in Minnesota, he was actually quite good. I mean, there were some age issues. There were some rust there. But, as painful as it is to say, arguably Brett Favre's best season ever was with the Minnesota Vikings. Now, they didn't win a Super Bowl, and they squandered a decent amount of time. Well, I shouldn't say squandered. I mean, what the heck else do they have going on? But they squandered a decent amount of time, not winning Super Bowls and all that kind of stuff. Lots of interceptions, lost playoff games, et cetera, et cetera. But, would you be upset about an MVP Rodgers season? Beating the Packers with Aaron Rodgers? I'm not saying that's going to happen as a Packer fan. Certainly don't want it to happen as a Packer fan. But I'm just saying if the stars are meant to align and that is your fate, that is what's going to happen, are you going to be mad about it? I know you want JJ, and I know you don't want Rodgers and all that, but I'm just saying. You're just going to have to take it, because it looks like, it's crazy that we've been joking about this. We were joking about how he's going to go to the Jets, and then it happened. And everything has just been, and it just keeps happening. Fortunately, there wasn't some kind of a scandal with Rodgers, and a cheerleader or anything. But they both had a drug habit. One was painkillers, one is ayahuasca. But you got the drugs. Again, I didn't hear about anything with a cheerleader. And now, he's got to go to Minnesota and have a couple good years, ride off into the sunset, defraud the government, and live the dream, man. I don't write the rules here. All right. It's just, I don't understand. I don't know. I don't get it, but it just keeps inching in that direction. And it's as absurd as it seems. Seriously, what's a better option? You could argue the Steelers if you want to, because they don't really have a backup plan at quarterback, which is to their benefit. I think Tomlin and Rodgers really like each other. You got DK and the psycho with the frickin' just the wacko, over there. And we'll pretend that the personality clashes won't be a problem and all that stuff. And, TJ Watt, defensive culture. I don't know that they necessarily have a good defense, but maybe, could happen. They used to, and they still got their best player, so that it's a thing. Listen, I want it to be a thing. Either retire or go to the Steelers. I don't want him in Minnesota. And I know a lot of Packer fans are like, oh, please go. It's going to be a disaster. Man, I can't do it. I can't. They made it work with Sam Darnold, okay? Do you know how much it would suck to have a mediocre Jordan Love season? Let's just hypothetical. A mediocre Jordan Love season with Caleb Williams taking a step, Detroit Lions again dominating everyone's face, and now a MVP, all-time great Aaron Rodgers season with Justin Jefferson, where the three NFC North teams are vying for domination and we're floundering trying to figure. I'm not doing it. Bring out JJ, okay? Bring him out. Send Rodgers over to the Steelers. He can go dominate over there. I don't really care. It'd be good for Tomlin anyways. He deserves something. Not a Super Bowl. I don't want him to win a Super Bowl, but, Rodgers and Tomlin, they could ride off into the sunset together. They'll take a couple swings at a playoff. They'll fail. They'll both get sent on their way. But it's a beautiful ending to two careers. But I'm just saying, from both perspectives, if I was each of those three teams, which one would I be most willing to go after Rodgers? It would be Minnesota, maybe Pittsburgh. I don't know. Probably not, though. If I was Rodgers, where do I want to go? I want to go to Minnesota. We'll see. All right, let's take a little bit of an early break. We got some minor news. A lot of free agents are gone. Mostly that type of stuff. We'll just kind of wrap those up, and then we'll get to moving on here. We'll get to stepping. We'll see what free agents are even available, if any, and turn our attention to the NFL draft. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. All right, so one of the guys on the probably not but maybe list, Dante Fowler, is officially off the board. The Cowboys have signed edge rusher Dante Fowler, formerly of the Commanders, to a 1-year, up to $8 million contract. So he's gone. So as it stands right now, not a ton to be super excited about, I guess. As far as free agents that are out there are quite a few wide receivers still available. Why don't we do actually position by position? Wide receiver is one of the bigger ones. So Cooper Kupp did just get signed, but Stephon Diggs is still out there. I don't think, again, the personality stuff, 31 years old, I don't think that's going to pan out. Keenan Allen at 33 years old, probably not going to work. Plus, somebody had just sent me that he was, I think, with the Chargers right now or something. It'd be ridiculous if he went back there, but whatever. Amari Cooper is an option. I think it's a legitimate option. Actually, SpotTrack, I found this kind of interesting. They actually have his market value currently at $19 million, which is relatively high. For example, Stephon Diggs, they have at $14 million. Keenan Allen at $11 million. It is the highest that they have by a pretty decent margin. So, their value of him is relatively high, which I don't super disagree with. I mean, like I said, I put Amari Cooper kind of in the Devontae Adams conversation. Certainly well above Cooper Kupp, who got 15. But, again, I don't think that they do it, but that one wouldn't be the worst in the world, in my opinion. Brandon Cooks is still available. All four of them are at least 30. In fact, Amari Cooper at 30.7 years old is the youngest, followed by Stephon Diggs at 31.2, Brandon Cooks 31.4, Keenan Allen almost 33 years old. If we sort this by SpotTrack's market valuations, after that would be Tyler Lockett. He's also 32.4 years old, followed by Brandon Cooks, 31.4 years old. Those guys they have at 7.7 and 5.1. So already we're down to like a $5 million contract, meaning there's really not much value here. The first person that is under that age is Elijah Moore. He's only 24.8 miles per hour. Good Lord. Years old, but they have his market value at $4.5 million. So the bottom line is that there's just no value there. The only guys that have value are the ridiculously old football players. That's it. And again, your best bet is probably Amari Cooper, for my money anyways. Because look, I'd rather pay $18-19 million for Amari Cooper than, $11 million for Keenan Allen, who just I just don't want. You know what I mean? What's the point of paying less just for the sake of paying less? I mean, do you want somebody or not? If you're going to do it. Otherwise, don't do it. I know some people just do something. No. Don't just do something. Don't do stupid things. Don't do bad things. Don't waste money for the sake of doing things. Do something that is good or don't do anything would be my preference. When we switch over to edge, it's also pretty bleak. You got Von Miller here at 36 years old and completely broke down. You got Matt Judon at 32.5, and they sort this by their previous AAV, so the previous contract that they got. The crazy thing is Matt Judon, his last contract was $13.6 million. Decent size. His market value right now they have at 4.2. In other words, at almost 33 years old, there's no value left in Matt Judon. They don't have a market value for Von Miller, probably because they use comps, and you're not going to find very many comps for a 36-year-old edge rusher, but whatever. At number 3, you have Preston Smith, then Zadarius Smith, and then who they actually have as the top available edge rusher. I'm scrolling just to make sure I'm not missing anybody. And that is, back up to the top here, Charles Omenihu. Now, the benefit with Charles Omenihu is 27.5 years old. His previous contract was $8 million. They have him valued at about 12. Omenihu is 6'5", 280. He's a big boy, 5th-round pick out of Kansas City. I really do think there's some utility here. He's never been a great player, but he, for a period of time, was kind of a pass rush specialist. Now, talked about pass rush specialists and all that kind of stuff, but at least he's a little bit younger. This past year, he was injured for most of the season, and his stats, even for when he did play, weren't great, but he was injured the first half of the season. In fact, he was injured the first half of the last season as well. But if you look at his heyday was kind of 2021, 2022, and 2023. Now, the thing that doesn't really work to his credit, first of all, I don't know if he's really ever played a full season. Let me check. 2022 would be the best bet there. Yeah, that looks like about a full season. The worst part about this is that 3-year stretch, he played for 4 teams. He played for for Houston. Then he got traded to San Francisco in 2021, so he played for 2 teams. Actually, no, it is 3 teams. I'm sorry. So it was Houston, San Francisco. 2022 was San Francisco. 2023 was Kansas City. So 3 teams in 3 years. But in those 3 years, he had an 82 pass rush grade with 33 pressures and 2 sacks on 240 attempts. So, again, he was split up that year, whatever. But he did really well as a pass rusher. The next year was his only kind of full year. 62 pressures and 7 sacks on 475 attempts. He's actually very similar to Dante Fowler in that he's really not a starter either. He was sort of just seen as a pure, pass rush specialist. In other words, he gets pulled a lot, and then on third down he gets thrown out there, and some first downs, et cetera, but definitely want him off the field and run downs. And then 2023, where he was hurt, for a quarter or a third of the year, probably quarter. 37 pressures on 318 attempts and 8 sacks. So I don't know how much you pay for him, but 27 years old, I don't hate a pure pass rush specialist. It's weird to have a 280-pound guy that's a pass rush specialist, but he does have injury issues. He's not going to help you against the run, which I know the Packers hate that, right? They don't like specialists in any regard. They don't even like guys that just play a single position, right? Like, you can't be an edge rusher that's a good pass rusher and a good run defender. That's not good enough. You also have to be an edge rusher that can rush the passer, stop the run, and play defensive tackle when we want you to. I mean, it's just stupid. Not literally, but kind of, pretty close. So I would guess they don't want this. They don't want to be in a situation where they're at a detriment or they could be manipulated or whatever. I personally would be okay with it. I don't know about $12 million for an injured pass rusher that can't stop the run and can't stay on a single team. He was with Kansas City the last 2 years, but again, he was hurt both years. But like I said with Fowler, in a year where there's nothing good, and unlike wide receiver, right, I said, do something good or don't do anything at all. Wide receiver is much more of that than edge rusher, because this is a position that constantly rotates anyways. You're constantly shuffling guys in and out and in and out and in and out and in and out. So it's not a matter of, well, if he comes in, then we're benching some great player. The depth at edge is terrible. So we're going to have at least 4 guys rotating pretty heavily no matter what. which of the four are you going to be like, oh, no? Even if you want to give Lucas Van Ness as much opportunity as possible. I mean, you got Rashawn. You got, I guess, Kingsley, who's... Ugh. You got Van Ness, who's been terrible, but, let's give him some opportunities. And then what? I mean, Carl Brooks is cool, I guess, to try... Or not Carl Brooks. I don't know. I'm blanking, but it doesn't... I mean, we don't have much. If you want to rent this guy to just throw him out there for third downs and immediately pull him, and literally nothing else, as long as it's not third and short, or put him out there first down and third down and have him sprint off the field, I don't care. Again, I know he's going to be a liability sometimes. They're going to go hurry up offense and we're in trouble. Whatever. I'm not saying I desperately want it, but there are times when I get to the point of being like, you know what, don't overthink it. Especially if he's willing to take a 1-year contract. In a year where we have more money than we know what to do with, although I'm fine with carrying it over to next year, if he'll do a 1 year or even a fake one, like a 2 year, but it's really 1, or 3 years, but it's really 1, whatever. Take a minor cap hit next year. I don't know. But he at least checks like 1.5 boxes. 27, and he can rush the passer. That's the half because he can't stop the run. After that, they have the most valuable guy at, Calais Campbell, who's almost 39 years old, just to give you an idea of kind of where we're at with value. So it's not great, Bob. Dennis Gardeck, 31 years old, $5 million is, I think, the next highest. So, again, running out of options. Omenahu is a guy. At defensive tackle, I've already professed my fondness for Raekwon Davis. Terrible football player. Packers won't do it and shouldn't. He might not even have a job in the NFL after this. I don't care. I'd like to have him. Now, moving off of that, it is beyond bleak. Beyond bleak for defensive tackles here. It's also not great, I don't think, necessarily in the draft, especially on the front end. The the highest market value right now, accidentally clicked something here, but the highest market value for a defensive tackle, $2.8 million for Byron Cowart. There is not a single defensive tackle they have on here. And there's some guys, they don't have market values or whatever, so somebody could sneak in there, I guess, maybe Lucky Fotu or something, I don't know. But the highest market value that they have is $2.8 million. That's how good they estimate he is and what he's worth. At 28.8 years old, $2.8 million. Previously played for Chicago. That is to say, there are no defensive tackles worth really much of anything. It's bad. Cornerback is a little bit better. As far as top of the list from a previous contract standpoint, James Bradbury, 32 years old. By the way, I don't really expect them to do anything at corner. They still have Jair as like a weird little option piece on top of having kind of done something. But James Bradbury is 31.6 years old. He, in 2022, we'll say prior to 2023, was a pretty solid football player. But 2023 was a bad year. 2024, he didn't play at all. The next highest as far as the previous contract that they got, not that Spotrac likes him that much, but Jeff Okudah. I've already talked about the familiarity there with Jeff Hafley. Hafley doesn't seem to care about that, and if he does, Brian Gutekunst doesn't care about it. Somebody doesn't care, because these connections with our defensive coordinator have yielded no fruit and seemingly no interest whatsoever. As far as the guys that they have with the highest contracts, there are several. The top being cornerback Mike Hilton. He's 31 years old, and they have him valued at about $12 million. Problem with Mike Hilton is that we already signed a Mike Hilton. Very similar player. Similarly graded, but not quite as good as Mike Hilton as far as how the grades have gone, although Mike Hilton is much more up and down. He had a 68 grade, which is pretty similar to Hobbs, but it was like either 80s or 40s. So it's very much boom or bust. And then again, 31 years old, but he's a safety / slot type of guy. The next highest they have is Rasul Douglas. That has already run its course. And then Asante Samuel, who I've already kind of talked about. Don't really have a lot of interest. He is 25, but I It's not really a thing. After that, the next highest they have is 34-year-old Stephon Gilmore, and they have him valued at $5.3 million. If you remember Gilmore and you're like, isn't he really, really good? Let me ask you this question. Where did he play last year? And if you don't know the answer to that question, then you don't really want him. Think hard. He was a Minnesota Viking. If you don't remember that, exactly. But he's played for five different teams in the last 5 years. He was with New England, then Carolina, then Indy, then Dallas, then Minnesota. He's been kind of on a downward spiral pretty much since 2018 with New England. He had a 90, then 85, and then an injured year, and then 80, 81, 69, 59. So he's kind of bottomed out this past year with Minnesota. So rapidly spiraling. I think the plane is officially crashed at 34 years old. Searching through the rubble to see if there's something left is not my favorite option. So again, there you go. Not a bunch going on. Couple other potential options. We talked about it a little bit already. According to Jordan Schultz, the Eagles are open to trade talks with Dallas Goedert. Again, doesn't really make a huge amount of sense, but there is a scenario where they really want 2 tight ends and they feel like they've only had one because of injury issues and, baby giraffe legs and all that stuff. Plus, with the wide receiver issues, maybe they're like, you know what, let's just get 2 tight ends and freaking get after it. You know what I mean? Again, super unlikely, but it's out there. And then another name that recently came up, again, Jordan Schultz. Don't know really how reliable he is, but he's kind of on his own. I don't see Ian Rappaport coming out and saying this is BS, but also I don't see a lot of other people confirming the report. But the Eagles, who are just having a fire sale over there, are open to trade talks involving edge rusher Bryce Huff. Now, Bryce Huff is 26.9 years old, 6'3", 255. He's never been a starter. He's been a rotational guy. He was with the Jets initially, so you've got the connection there with the solid defense and whatnot, which you assume would be decent connection with what we do here. 2022, 2023 were solid. So his first 2 years, again, never started, but his first 2 part-time years were not very good. Then in 2022, he had a 90 grade pass rush specialist, 88 pass rush, 36 pressures on 173 pass rush attempts and 4 sacks. And then 2023, he had an 87 pass rush grade, 67 pressures on 334 attempts and 10 sacks. I mean, that's incredible production. In fact, even 2024, where he didn't grade out as well, I mean, it was 70. It's not bad, but 70 pass rush, 23 pressures on 189 attempts and 2 sacks. And you say the sacks are low. Well, on 189 pressure attempts, maybe a little bit. Maybe you want double that, 4 or something. I don't know. But 23 pressures is not terrible on 190 attempts, especially for that being kind of a down year. Now, he also seemed to have missed a little bit of time there. Weeks 11 through 17, he didn't play. But, he was an outside linebacker. I think he's probably better as a defensive end. I think 2023 he would have been as well, because they switched to that over there with the Jets. But before that, he was a defensive end, and that was his highest graded season. He actually had a 65 run defense grade along with his 88 pass rush grade. So I don't know what it is about guys like Bryce Huff. I'm guessing because he's a pass rush specialist. You could also argue that the Jets and Eagles were so loaded with talent that he just ended up being a rotational guy. It's strange to me to see these guys who are really productive as pass rushers, that are young, that can't seem to get on the field, can't seem to stay on a team, can't seem to get contracts. And I shouldn't say that. He has a contract. He's looking to possibly get traded, but I don't know. It's just it's odd to me. Would I be interested? Yeah, I would, and I think he has more upside, to be honest, as a potential run defender. I mean, 2 of his 5 years have been decent run defense years, on top of 3 straight years of 4. If you're going based on grades, 4 years of being a pretty good pass rusher. The stats weren't as good, although it was such a small sample size that it's actually pretty close. 17 pressures on 210 attempts. It's low, but again, it's such a small thing. I don't know. But he also had 4 sacks, which is a high sack rate for that low of attempts. As for Trey Hendrickson, it's, well, kind of good news, kind of bad news, I guess. If you want to be optimistic, the good news is that the Bengals have actually made significant progress with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, getting them both really big contracts. And you would assume that that's going to further push Trey Hendrickson out the door, and it may. However, it was also reported by Tom Pelissero there's been communications in recent days between Trey Hendrickson's representation and the Bengals. Now, communication isn't anything more than just communication, but I don't think it's great to have, weeks of teams talking with Trey Hendrickson's team, no deal gets done, and then Trey Hendrickson is now going back to the table with the Bengals. It's just kind of fulfilling what exactly I thought was going to happen to begin with, which is he's going to go out there, he's going to say, here's kind of the offer, whatever, and the Bengals are going to find a way to get the deal done. And again, maybe they won't, but, it's also not good that we've been hearing that teams are more than willing to give Trey Hendrickson the amount of money he wants. It's just a question of whether or not, or not even whether or not, it's just a question or an issue of the Bengals' asking price. What that tells me is that Trey Hendrickson's asking price is actually reasonable, which is going to make it, reasonable for the Bengals to be able to figure out a way to get him to stay. Now, again, maybe not. Maybe this was a gamble by the Bengals that they lost, where they didn't think he would be able to get as much on the market, and he's got a bunch of teams saying, yeah, we'll pay you that and more, and so they're not going to be able to strike a deal. I don't know, but I just don't like, I've never liked it, but I don't like the look of it. I guess another positive thing is, Trey Hendrickson could go to Detroit or Minnesota or Chicago or San Francisco or any number of teams that suck a heck of a lot more than the Bengals. And by suck, I mean I hate. If he stays with the Bengals, he's a freaking Bengal, and why would I care? Aside from when we play the Bengals, but, few and far between. That would be another positive, but as far as the prospects of landing that the white whale, in my opinion, it's not looking great. Finally, a couple of Packers are on the way out the door. The Colts have signed cornerback Corey Ballentine, formerly of the Packers. Not that that's massive news, but it kind of just goes to the depth issue. Anytime Ballentine, I think, was on the field, it was not good news. But furthermore, the Vikings have signed Eric Wilson. Kind of knew that Eric Wilson was going to go out the door. He is a perfect example of a guy that I always liked more than the Packers did. In fact, I think I always liked Eric Wilson more than the rest of the NFL did. I don't know why the Vikings got rid of him. I don't know why the team he went to after that got rid of him. Then the Packers got him, and they just never seemed to want to put him on the field. He was this phenomenal middle linebacker when he was on the field, and then they're like, okay, so-and-so's back healthy. Friggin' Quay's back, you got to go sit, or we move him to a new position, weak side or something stupid, and he's not as, it's like, dude, just put him at middle linebacker. Nah, we don't like this guy. But Vikings get him back, and to be fair, I don't know how much he has left. He's been around the league for a while, but the prospect of him coming back, which was low to begin with, is officially done and over with. All right, let's take our final break. We'll come back and do a little bit of NFL drafty. We'll be right back. All right, so one thing I want to do is kind of take a 30,000-foot view of some of the draft prospects position by position. Not sure how long it'll take. Shouldn't take all that long, so I think one segment will be good. We're just going to start with defensive tackle because I feel like it. So really all I wanted to do was break these guys up into very broad categories and just be able to kind of, in a snapshot, get a view, but also, more importantly, which guys check really every single box. And obviously, very few are going to do that. So one of the things that every Packer fan seems to want to say right now is, I'm tired of the projects. I want to get somebody who has production in college. So a couple different categories I put these guys in. So there are, how many different guys do I have here for defense? So I did guys that were in the top 200. This is a while ago, a list that I made a while ago. But there's 25 of them. 25 defensive tackles. So the first category I have is pickable. That just means likelihood that we're going to have a chance to draft them. So Mason Graham, it's a 3-point scale. It's yes or good or whatever, no, and then somewhere in between. So Mason Graham is a 1 out of 3, right? We're not going to have a chance at him. There's a chance, but it's again, I don't want to get too stuck in the weeds here. Walter Graham, Kenneth Nolan, and Derek Harmon, I put in the maybe category, and then everybody else was a 3. Then there's PFF, and it's basically, did they have very good PFF grades? Now, again, it's tough because sometimes it's for 1 year and not a bunch of other years, and sometimes it's one category instead of the other. So I had to kind of, on the fly, determine where I felt they went. But generally speaking, in order to get good PFF grades, you need to have, probably 80 or higher, at least 70 or higher in both run and pass rush, right? Can't just be one or the other. And then again, if it's kind of close, then it needs to be multi-year, whatever. It's, again, broad strokes here. Then there's injuries. I was very gracious with injuries because every single person that I looked at had some form of an injury at some point. There's a game where they didn't play for one reason or another. I'm not going to investigate every single person, but for the most part, especially in the final season, did you seem to play most games? And for everybody, it ended up being around 500 snaps. So if you had around 400, 500, 600 snaps in the last several years, I let it go. Most people were okay. Then there's production, and that's just simply looking at pass rush. Generally speaking, you have to be above 10%. The sacks can't be really low, and I probably want more than 1 year. I'm really sorry to inform you, very few check that box, and that's really going to be a problem across the board. When you say, I want a guy that produced in college, it's not that the Packers just never really do it. I think it's the fact that it's just not very common. It might depend on the position and on the year and all that stuff, but especially when you look at the top 25, let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 6 that checks the box out of 25. Again, different people might go back and have different conclusions. There might even be some on here that didn't really have very good sack numbers, but I snuck them in there anyways. So roughly 5 to 6 out of 25. And I don't think the rate gets much better as you go beyond the top 200. And then it's fit. And fit basically just means not a nose tackle. So, again, a little bit subjective there, but if you were 320 plus pounds, some guys kind of are okay. So I gave them 2s because I'm uncertain. But if you're 320 plus, you're a good run defender and a bad pass rusher, it's very obvious what you are. Or if you're just 345, okay, boom, done. I don't care. Of the prospects that checked every single box, there were 2. You could say 3 if Derek Harmon, if you gave him a 3 in terms of being pickable, if you said we're going to have a chance to draft him, especially in some kind of a trade-up or whatever, Derek Harmon would technically fit all 3. Again, based on my metrics, it is a little bit iffy in some ways. But if we went through, let's do this. Who had all 3 in every category outside of that? It's kind of interesting because it's not really in the order that you would necessarily expect. And no, Kenneth Grant, Walter Nolan, and Mason Graham would not be there if it wasn't for the pickable thing. Mason Graham, I put a 2 in terms of fit because he is a bigger dude. I'm assuming, based on where he's at, that he can carry it, which is fine. You can give him a 3. But even his production was kind of mid-tier, not a 3. It was a 2, not a 3. Walter Nolan was a 2 out of 3 in terms of production. Kenneth Grant is a 2 out of 3 in terms of fit and a 1 out of 3 in terms of production. It was not good production. So the actual first checks every box is Darius Alexander out of Toledo, and that comes with a caveat because it's Toledo. So arguably the only real 3 out of 3, and again, smaller school, is Elijah Roberts out of SMU. That's it. Those are the only ones. And Elijah Roberts is at 195 overall, so not a lot of agreement on him being a freak, but there you go. Those are your 2 guys. Darius Alexander, Toledo, Elijah Roberts, SMU. If we look at who checks the PFF boxes, the only guy that really just got a 1 was Ty Hamilton out of Ohio State. Just not good at all. He was terrible in production. PFF hated him. Not good. The 2 out of 3 for PFF, this could be kind of good grades in both categories or maybe good in one, not in the other. And by the way, if you're looking for example, a Slayton replacement, there's probably several guys that are, a 1 out of 3 in terms of fit, which just means they're a nose tackle, and they're a 2 out of 3 because they had really good run defense and maybe not good pass rush. So you could slide them in here. Cam Jackson, Jamari Caldwell. One guy that's actually really interesting is this JJ Pegues, or however you say his name, out of Ole Miss. He kind of fits that category. Really good run defense. The production is okay. It's not it's whatever. But nose tackle type. So another one would be Deion Walker out of Kentucky. Similar situation, although there's potentially some injury stuff there. But Cam Jackson, Jamari Caldwell, Howard Cross out of Notre Dame, Riley Mills, JJ Pegues, whatever, Ty Robinson, Josh Farmer, Jordan Phillips, Jordan Birch, Shamar Turner, Omar Norman Lott, Deion Walker, and Tyleik Williams were all via PFF. Guys that PFF really liked, and there's plenty of them. I mean, it's a pretty high bar, and about half of them cleared it. Elijah Roberts, SMU. Simeon Barrow out of Miami. He was a pretty good one too, actually. The production was kind of mid-tier, but he was pretty solid. CJ West, Indiana. Aeneas Peebles. I think that was another one I really liked, Peebles. Alfred Collins, Texas. Darius Alexander, Toledo. TJ Sanders, South Carolina. Derek Harmon out of Oregon. Kenneth Grant, Walter Nolan, Mason Graham. So the top guys there. Injuries, the only real red flag was Jordan Birch, and then there were 2 kind of with Deion Walker and Shamar Turner. Again, subjective. Everybody had some injuries. Whatever. Production, the only guys that hit the production marks were Riley Mills out of Notre Dame, Josh Farmer, Florida State, Elijah Roberts, SMU, Darius Alexander, Toledo, Derek Harmon, Oregon, Jordan Birch, Oregon. So you might remember when we did the mock drafts and whatnot, Jordan Birch was actually mocked to the Packers in the first round. First of all, he's potentially an edge. I think he was an edge in college, but he's like 295. At least that's what PFF had him listed at, so that's kind of a weird thing. And there was another thing where he seemed to have injury issues, so it was kind of a fluky thing to go back and check on. Similarly is Shamar Turner out of Texas A&M. Really unproductive second year, all that stuff, but it seemed like there was some injury stuff, and the year before, 2023, he was very good. So might want to kind of look into that guy. Because if you look at his 2023, I think he's 3s across the board. But then kind of the meh production, Deion Walker, Shamar Turner, again, unless you go back to 2023, Mason Graham, Walter Nolan, TJ Sanders, Aeneas Peebles, Simeon Barrow, Omar Norman Lott, Ty Robinson, and Pegues, whatever. And then the poor production, Kenneth Grant, Alfred Collins, CJ West, Tyleik Williams, Jordan Phillips, Howard Cross, Jamari Caldwell, Cam Jackson, and Ty Hamilton. Of that group, most of them are not good fits in terms of scheme, or at least maybe, nose tackle types. There were 2 that were bad with production and are built to be more like pass rush types. That's Howard Cross out of Notre Dame and Ty Hamilton of Ohio State. Ty Hamilton is just really bad. It's not good. I don't know if there's some excuse, injury, whatever, but it's rough. And then, fit, we don't necessarily need, but the, I don't know if we went through all the nose tackle types, but Cam Jackson, Jamari Caldwell, Jordan Phillips, Tyleik Williams, CJ West, Pegues, whatever, and Deion Walker out of Kentucky. So again, of those 2, Deion Walker and Pegues, let's call him freaking JJ Pegs. That's not good. Shouldn't say that. That's not the name. I don't know. Peg boy. Nope. Those are 2 guys that are potential Slayton replacements that had decent enough production. And then Mr. JJP there checks the box also of not having an injury issue, which Deion Walker was 2 out of 3 as far as the injury stuff. So anyways, I'm going to use this to kind of dig in a little further and see if I can refine this a little bit further, but that's just kind of a little snapshot, again, of maybe where to look. Again, hard to find anybody that's checks every single box. Production, as far as pass rush, is hard to come across. It's probably even harder if you want consistency over years and all that kind of stuff. But Like I said, you got 5 or 6 out of 25 right here. But I'm going to leave you with that. Tomorrow we'll take a swing at edge and maybe some other positions depending on how much other news is out there. But I will talk to you tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye-bye.